Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here with Janice Ying on Drum Talk TV's drumming injury talk, which can happen in many different ways, right, Janice?
That's right. That's right. I'm excited to be here, be back.
Thanks. Yeah, we're back. New season, new co-host. Janice's second episode. Janice came to us via our first. Actually, I'm the co-host. First host, which was Dr. Nadia Azar, who got so busy she wasn't able to do the show anymore. So she referred us to Janice, and you've been amazing. It's been great. It's been fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun for me too.
You're welcome. So before we go on to like the kinesiology side and the physical side of drumming injuries caused by movement and repetitive motion and impact and bad ergonomics and things like that, I somewhat solved, or found a remedy for a different kind of drumming injury. And this is the first time I'm mentioning this on Drum Talk TV, actually. And thanks, Steve. Got a little note from Steve. Everything's great. And here it is. Here comes my big reveal, folks. Ready? I have to get close to the camera because I finally got hearing aids. It's been life changing. And I know that I needed hearing aids because of my loss of hearing from 54 years of playing drums and like an idiot listening to loud music, way too loud in the car or the van or the truck, whatever it was at the time, as well as just with headphones on when I was a kid and earbuds
Yeah.
while I'm jogging. Way too loud. So 4 years ago, I had my hearing tested, Janice, and I had, I think, 24% loss in the left and 11 or 17 in the right. I don't remember.
Oh,
And
wow.
these things, I'm going to pull one out. They're they're amazing, and they're tiny. Look how tiny they are. That's the
Nice.
that little black spot. Those three dots are the microphone. You've got the volume adjustment. It came with different size, ends, just like any other earbud, and that's it. So here's what took me so long to get them. When I first got diagnosed, and I know I need it. I have horrible tinnitus. It's gotten better though. But my point is, back then hearing aids were $1,200, $3,500, $6,000. So this went on for a while, and COVID came, and then I put it off, put it off. Well, we knew that it got approved as an over-the-counter product, so we started looking just a few weeks ago. My
Yeah.
wife almost ordered a pair for $270. Then she found these $99.
Amazing.
Yeah, and they don't have all the features, but for
Sure.
$99, my life and everyone around me has changed because now I'm not constantly saying,
What?
what, yeah, hey, what'd you say? With the horn in my ear. It's just been
Right.
amazing. So, folks, if you have had hearing loss due to loud music or loud kids or a loud wife or ex-wife or both at the same time, plus your girlfriend or your boyfriend, whatever, don't let vanity get in the way of this. Like, obviously, I don't have hair to hide it with. Sometimes I wear a one of my beanies, not to cover it, but just because it's cold to cover my ears. We live up in the mountains, but
Oh,
I could. I don't care if people like. So what? It doesn't make me feel older. It
yeah.
actually makes me feel younger because I can freaking hear again. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the thing is that like hearing loss is really a real big topic, especially these days. I would say in like the last like 5 to 10 years, it's really kind of come to the forefront of like musician health, and
Yeah.
people are paying a lot more attention to it. And there's like you only get one pair of eardrums, right? You have
Yeah.
drums, but you can have as many drums as you want, but you only get a pair of eardrums. And once you start to lose a hearing, it's not like a tendonitis or a muscle issue. Like you can't get it back.
Yeah.
And so trying to take kind of preemptive steps to help protect your hearing as early as possible. And even if you're like older and you've already been down the block and been playing for a while, you can still take actionable steps to care for your ears, and having good quality earplugs that can maybe block out certain frequencies more than others. Like I know musicians, they're really resistant. A lot of them are really resistant to using earplugs. It's like, oh, it like kind of muffles the sound. It doesn't give me like the kind of fine details that my ears are used to hearing. But
Yeah, and that's
I've
why I
had,
didn't wear them when I was young
yeah,
because the technology wasn't there. And it was like playing with
yeah,
your fingers in your ears, and I couldn't hear dynamics. I couldn't hear the tones of the
right.
cymbals
I
and
mean,
bells and
technology
drums.
has come a long, long way.
Yeah.
And now, especially, you have these devices in your ears that can kind of calibrate what you take in. But, I've had a number of conversations with audiologists and like music-based audiologists, similar to what I do. Like, I specialize in working with musicians. There are audiologists who specialize in working with musicians too. And you can actually train your ear to adapt to listening with your earplugs in.
Interesting.
And it's a process just like you train to adapt with, strengthening
And
or
with
whatnot.
these, with the hearing aids,
Yeah,
I've had to
exactly.
adjust. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been
So
interesting.
it's really cool. I mean, but yeah, you only get one set of ears, and you really have to protect it, because otherwise, it can be pretty limiting.
Yeah. I did
Right.
not realize how limited my hearing was until I got these. And
Yeah, and it
they're,
was it was like, it was substantial, it was significant, like 20, you said like 11 in one
yeah,
ear and 20 something in the other. So,
yeah,
I mean, just think about if it were like 50% impaired or even more, like how
yeah.
much more limiting it
Can't
can be. So,
imagine.
imagine like you already experienced some kind of like limitation, and yeah,
When I
so
take one
hearing is
out,
very important.
yeah, like when I showed that one, I couldn't believe how much I could not hear out of this ear, but I could hear myself talk through the microphone. In this one, it was weird.
So wild.
Yeah, and this one's only at about turned up to only 10% of its volume capacity. This one's at
Mm,
about 15 or maybe 20%. There's still so much room to go. So for someone with much more hearing loss than myself,
yeah.
$99 pair would work. And for the brand, if I may, and no, folks, I do not have an endorsement deal with them or get paid or anything, but I can't pronounce the name of it, but this is the logo, which is a concha shell, which is the name of the bone in our ear, of course.
One of them, one of
Yeah,
them.
and that's the model number. And there's the only other info I have. So if you look that up on Amazon, folks, you'll find it. There's a brand name, but there's like no vowels in the name. I believe it's a Chinese brand because the spelling of this word, and I can't even find it at the moment, but just look for that. Just, you'll find it, folks. Just Google $99 hearing aids, and I'm sure you'll find. And it came in a great USB charger case, and when they're charged, they'll last 30 hours, which is
That's
amazing.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I've gotten over that drumming injury hump. Um, if folks chime in, if you have issues with, upper shoulder pain, neck pain, sciatica, bursitis, tendonitis, carpal tunnel, arthritis, pulled muscles, if you're achy after you play. Janice, did I leave anything out? I mean, there's so many things that can happen from bad posture, hard impact, or just uh, bad setups. Um,
Sure, like nerve stuff.
yeah, I
Yeah,
get that.
tingling, numbness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that.
I've seen it all.
Sometimes, yeah, I'm gonna see if I can reach a drumstick real quick. And while I grab a drumstick back there, tell everyone a bit about your musical background so that they know not only are you a physical therapist and you have your own business, which is tagged in the post, folks. She's in Los Angeles, but you're also a musician and you work with musicians on the PT side,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I'll
Yeah,
grab a
yeah.
stick while
So
you tell everybody.
yeah, sure. Yeah, my background initially, I was a classical pianist, concert pianist. I also played the violin as well, and that's what I got my college degree in. And while I was in college, I started suffering a number of different injuries. I had wrist pain on my right side. I had shoulder pain on the left side, which kind of prevented me from playing the violin the way I wanted to. So I ended up getting surgery on my left shoulder.
Oh,
And kind of through that process, I kind of became frustrated, not at the people who were trying to help me, but kind of like the whole process where, I failed out of PT. I didn't find any relief in physical therapy actually when I was going there as a patient.
hmm.
And
How
then
that's ironic when you
I
consider where
yeah,
your
I know.
career path
But
is led.
through that process, I could see that, strengthening was important.
Hmm.
It's just that I didn't have the tools or the knowledge to know exactly what I needed to do. And so, but I also got frustrated at like the culture of musicians. And I had someone tell me, "Oh, well, you play really well. Why are you hurting?" Or like, "Well, you have pain. Can't you just fake it?" It's like, yeah, I could fake it, but that's not really like helping me. It's helping you. It's not helping me. So at the end of the day, I chose to become a physical therapist to try and get the music industry or the music culture kind of to come up to speed and like helping people learn more about their bodies, learn more about the physical aspect of what it takes to play, but then also from the medical side or the health professional side, get people to start to think about how you can like more specifically use the tools that you have to help someone go back to the task that they want to play.
Right.
And
You,
which I didn't get at from both ends. So that's kind of what I was trying to problem
yeah.
solve.
And you talked about faking it. And in a moment, Roger, thanks for chiming in. Janice will address that. But I play match grip, folks. So in my left hand, I'm right-handed. I usually don't play like this unless I'm playing jazz or certain things. This hand, not so much of a problem, but my right hand, if I play a lot or not necessarily a lot of length of time, sometimes it could be a shorter length of time, but some really intense music, not just hard hitting, but just a lot of complexity, a lot of beats and stuff. I get to a point where I can't, let me get in front of the camera, where I can't hold it like this. This is how I play. I
Mm-hmm.
can't hold it like this. I end up having to grip it like this because my hand and fingers feel so less strengthened and coordinated, and there's a nerve pain or a bit of numbness. So I feel like I have to hold it the way you're absolutely not supposed to, only because you don't get mobility out of the stick, but to keep the stick in my hand. And
Right.
I don't know if there's an exercise I can do or supplements I can take or.
There are definitely things that you can do, and this is kind of like rooted in like the concepts of like ergonomics that probably like not you and Nadia talked about before in the past, but oftentimes I see a lot of drummers, ironically. Not ironically, I
Or
see a lot of
not, yeah.
drummers. But there's a lot of different sticks on the market, and a lot of people go by like what feels good or what produces good tone or what good sound. But also think about like the diameter of the sticks themselves. The narrower the diameter, the more your hands have to work. So maybe even getting something with a slightly wider stick
Mm-hmm.
might actually help the amount of work, or it would decrease the amount of work that you are using when you're holding the stick.
Right.
So stuff like that is you can modify it. You can always like strengthen you have tiny muscles in your hand, so you can
Yeah.
always work on like strengthening those smaller muscles in the hand that are used for kind of like your nuance or kind of like your dexterity, if you
Yeah.
will. With those like heavier, powerful hits, you should be using more like the muscles, kind of like your torso and like
Mm-hmm.
your shoulders and your back to help generate that power.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting. I have those squeezing things for hands. I should
yeah.
probably start
Mm-hmm.
using them more regularly, see what happens.
Yeah. Or even
Yeah.
like putty, there's like therapeutic putty that
Oh.
people can get, and you can put them in any shape and they have different amounts of like resistances.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's like a light one and all the way like different colors to correlate with like different strengths. So you could actually use that and like kind of mold it around, which I think are really good for musicians just because we don't stay in one position all the time. We're
Right.
we're doing like small kind of intricate movements
Yeah.
in our hands. So that might be something you can look into as well.
Awesome. And Roger says, when I listed off all those ailments, he said all of the above, laugh out loud. But then he said, I have nerve damage, apparently. Roger, feel free to chime in with a little bit more detail. Like, where is that nerve damage? And have you officially been diagnosed as he removes a cat hair? Okay, I know who's been in here. Go ahead and, yeah, give us a little bit more. He says overuse injury is pretty inevitable. Yeah, I believe so, especially if, like Janice said, you're using a stick that might not be, the right stick for your size hands and whatnot. I use a 5B. No, I'm sorry, I use a 5A. And it actually feels like the right size. The stick I grabbed as an example is actually a real John Bonham stick, and it's thicker. And I used to play with sticks even thicker still. When I was younger, I used sticks that were rather the size was Quantum 3000s, and they were almost like marching sticks, but not really. And when
Mm.
I look at sticks like that now, I can't believe I played what I played with that size sticks. My hands aren't. I'm small. I'm only like 5'7" on a really good day. Um, but my hands are good size for my size, so I don't necessarily need smaller sticks. But that 5'8" feels comfortable. It's that fatigue that gets to me. Um, uh, I've noticed, especially if I'm playing a show and I
Yeah,
just play more and maybe put more into it. When I
sure.
say a show, I mean a live show, which is rare. I don't play live a lot. But when I play down in my studio on Drum Talk TV, again, if I'm playing some real complex music, like a bunch of Rush songs, a bunch of Genesis songs, ELP, Zeppelin, stuff like that, I get that fatigue. And it's more so in my right hand than it is my left, which makes sense because the
Hmm.
right hand's hitting more typically,
Yeah,
you know.
right.
So, but
Yeah.
let's see if Roger, he says, I've learned to change my setup posture, not to overly extend my arms. That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. He says I have shoulder issues, tendonitis. Traditional grip tends to aggravate it more. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So setup is key, especially for drummer, like kit drummers who play on a kit.
Yeah,
So you often have to think about in ergonomics you think about like zones of reach, right? And so the things that you use the most, meaning like your snare and your hi-hat, like you should be able to like keep your arms by your side and like just play there without moving anything from your shoulders. And then you
right.
have, you know, your hi-hats and your toms and everything like that like in front of you, but you shouldn't have to reach beyond like what your arm is doing. Like your trunk shouldn't be
Yeah.
moving in order to reach those things. And you can have crazy setups, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to think about what you're using the most
Hmm.
and where you spend the most time in. And then also like if you're going to be playing a lot or if you're practicing a lot or you're doing a lot of rehearsals getting ready for a tour or a show, is your body conditioned to play those longer and more intense periods?
Right.
And oftentimes people just kind of like they practice at a certain level or a certain level of intensity, and then something comes up, they have a gig or they have a rehearsal they have to get to, and they just like bump it up like 15 notches, and then they wonder, oh, how come my wrist is like sore,
It's
and
like
how
curling
come
20 pounds regularly, and all of a sudden they jump up to 40 and try to do it
yeah.
at the same level,
Right,
right? It's kind of
right,
the same
right,
thing.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
for
So it'd
sure.
be good to start out being able to do the 40, for example, but dial it down for when you want to economize your energy, but have that muscular structure and the nerve memory and stamina to do the higher
Right,
intensity stuff when you need to.
right.
And that's
It's
what the
it's a
conditioning's all about.
yeah. It's a hard thing because I think part of it too is like musicians, they just jump in and they start practicing at a certain level, certain amount of time, but we never really take the time to figure out what our actual like baseline is, like where our bodies are like, oh, that's enough. Like that's where I feel pretty comfortable, but it's challenging enough. Um, so we kind of tend to blow past that point, and that's
Yeah.
where overuse injuries actually start to develop because you're asking your body to do way more than what it's physically able to at that time. But if we kind of scale things back enough where maybe instead of practicing 2 hours, maybe your physical limit is actually 1 hour, you can build yourself up to that 2 hours, but you just have to do it in a safe way.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
any
all.
musician can practice like in, build themselves up to play 3 hours, 4 hours, and that's okay if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But you have to start at the right place in order to avoid these kind of injuries that we're talking about, and that keeps me employed. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yet she's giving us solutions, which is very kind. And, I know you're right because all musicians, whether it's a pianist, a violinist, cellist, guitar player, bass player, keyboard player, whatever, there's always risk of injury, whether it's just on a smaller scale of movement, but repetitive, not
right,
impact involved, whether it's this, for tendonitis, nodules, carpal tunnel, things like that. But with drummers, there's more of a risk because you've got the intensity factor. It's more physical, more limbs
It
are
is.
playing the instrument. Yeah, and I think that most musicians are so into the art and the music of it and their gear and playing that they don't think of the physical part as much the way they should from an athletic standpoint. And like you said, work your way up to not just certain levels of stamina having to do with respiratory stamina, but what your body will, hold up through before you get that hand fatigue or, whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, I think another thing that I oftentimes mention with people is like, it's not always just the instrument that makes you a good musician, right? You
Right.
could have the highest quality gear, the most expensive gear, but that none of that matters if your body can't execute it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you could have like a dinky like student model instrument with someone who's like a expert at playing and make it sound
Absolutely.
incredible. So it's really like the body, and then obviously the art of it. There's that huge component of it too.
Yeah.
But you could have all the ideas and how you want to phrase things and how you want to execute things, but if your body can't do it, then you only have half of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. Our body, no matter what instrument we play, is the most important part of the instrument.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, you have the highest rated gear, and none of that matters if your hand can't form the chord or do the runs for the solo or play the fills or any of that. We
Another
come
another
first.
analogy is like, okay, we all know people who golf, right?
Yeah,
How much money do golfers spend on like finding the best equipment,
right.
but then they still like shank to the right every single time
Good
that they
point. Yeah,
try.
exactly. You've seen
So,
me golf.
it's, but if they worked on their flexibility and they know the motions that they should be doing,
Yeah.
maybe they can, again, take any piece of equipment and still execute fairly decently.
Yeah, that's such a
I
great analogy. A good
Yeah,
golfer
and
should be able to grab any club with rust on it and knock it to where they want it.
right. And I wish that my wish for musicians is that we start seeing ourselves more as athletes in the sense that like how we should be training, how we should be caring for our bodies more. And it's not that we're an athlete, we're gonna just like bulk up and get super strong and like lift 500 pounds,
Right.
but how we train and how we approach our practice and everything like that, it should, in my perspective, like I really hope that musicians maybe kind of shift their mindset a little bit with that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just like long distance running, cross country skiing, playing
totally.
tennis, jogging,
Absolutely.
riding a bike. The condition, the better the condition your body is in, the less risk there is to injury. It's
A
that
hundred
simple.
percent.
And you
It
would never
is.
ride a bike that had crazy ergonomics where you're stretching at the far end of the pedal, pointing your toe or way out there. So why would we set up our drum sets unergonomic for us? And I know the answer. Of course, part of the answer is some people
Right.
just set their stuff up for show, because it
Sure.
looks great like that. But you gotta make it for the best playability and lowest risk of injury first, and then see where you can move things, still economizing the setup, see where you can move things
Yeah.
so it looks cool to your liking
Yeah.
and your style and your personal brand, but you can play it without hurting yourself.
Totally. Totally. What's the phrase? Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. And it applies here as well. And Roger Salem says, Janice, you're on point for a violin player. Ha ha ha, he says.
Thanks. I'll take the compliment.
But it also agrees with our conversation about, just the impact alone. If you hit too hard and if your heads are too tight, it makes for a tighter surface. If you hit too hard, it's just going to travel, all the way up. One of the things that's always amazed me, Janice, about marching drum corps snare drum players is they're playing on Kevlar and there's no
Yeah.
tighter drum head, but
Right.
yet they're not using a ton of force to get the sounds. It's all in the nuances and the stick
Right.
control, doing those crazy rudiments and getting the volume on the hardest surface as hard as a tabletop, basically, without
Right.
that impact going all the way up their arm, typically.
Right. Yeah. It's I mean, you have to think they have other physical demands too that you think about, like the harnesses and the weight
Oh,
of the
yeah.
drums that they're carrying. So something has to give. Imagine if you had a really, like, you had a less tight drum head and you're carrying all that stuff, how much more physical that
Yeah.
would potentially be. So
Yeah.
there's a trade-off. For every correction, there's a trade-off, whether it's positive or negative. And you kind
Exactly.
of have to weigh out what you're looking for and kind of that balance.
Yeah. Let's see. And Roger says, and when you've been playing for years combined with age, how old are you, Roger, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to answer. You're going to face physical challenges. Wish I made certain adjustments when I was younger. That this information is priceless. Thanks. Hopefully, the younger ones are listening. I am listening. I'm not the younger ones. Oh, thanks for the compliment. That's great, and that's why Janice is here to bring I could bring you some info from experience, but Janice is coming at this from a medical, professionally trained point of view as an active physical therapist, which is just great. Um, he says he'll be 60 this year. Awesome. Congratulations. And look 40. I look 60, but I'm 40. No, I'm kidding. I'll be 61 in a couple months. So we're right there together. And I've been playing since shortly before I turned 7. So 54 years, like exactly right around now.
Wow.
Yeah, and my setup has changed. My main drum kit, the big blue one, has changed over the years. I look at some old pictures and I can't believe how I used to have stuff set up. In fact, there's one. Let me grab something. I'll show everybody a mistake I was making when I was younger. Hold on. Grab this off the wall.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like as you age, like your body's going to change, or kind of like your physical capacity is going to change too. So
Yeah.
you should be making like micro adjustments as time goes on.
So I mentioned I'm short, but in this picture, I used to sit when I was young. I was 20 in this picture. Um, I used to sit like Alan White of Yes used to sit. It never seemed to bother him, and he's taller than me, but he would sit so that my femurs are almost, but not quite parallel with the floor. They're my hips a little higher than to make it parallel. Alan's was about another 6 inches higher. So his femur was like at this angle. And it worked for him. So I used to sit like that. But if you look at this picture, let's see if I can look at the tom toms in front of me, how high up they are,
Oh
and
yeah.
consequently how high up that ride symbol is
Oh yeah.
on the left side, and so on. So everything used to be much higher than how I set up now. Um,
Yeah.
so I've changed a lot over the years. And when we moved into this house and we built the studio, which was 7 years ago this past month, I my bass drum does not face forward on that kit. It's cocked to the right so that if I sit naturally, it's in that spot. And that allowed me to lower everything else as well. So my highest toms are about like that kind of height. If I reach my arm like that, the next
Mm-hmm.
ones are lower, like almost straight across in front of me. And then my floor toms are right there, high, about that much higher than my waist. So everything is brought in and economized
Cool.
big time. Yeah, it's made
Yeah.
such a difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the setup, obviously we idolize the people who we do because they are amazing, incredible musicians, but that your body type isn't, from what I'm hearing, isn't the same as their body type. And
Right.
so you really have to consider like what fits the best for you as that person.
Yeah.
There may be components that you can like draw in from your heroes and whatnot, but especially like seat height or kind of like where you position things, that's really a you thing, not someone else.
Right. Like if
Um,
if Danny Carey of Tool is like 6'4", let's say six
yeah,
four, 6'5". So if
yeah,
someone like me wanted to set up like him and sit the same way, it probably wouldn't make sense. And I don't even need to look at how he sits to figure that out. You know what I
right.
mean? It's funny though, because some drummers like Nico McBrain, who's taller than me, he's like 6 feet, maybe 6'1", maybe, but still he's taller than me. And he sits so that his knees are slightly higher than his waist. And I see people sit like that and they say they get more force for their foot pedals, but I can't do the math. It just looks so uncomfortable to me, but it's obviously working for Nico.
Yeah, I mean, it'll work from a mechanical perspective. My bias is to have the hips slightly higher than the knees. Maybe not as high as what you were describing, like
Right.
such a big tilt. I know drummers who sit very high and they're very efficient and very effective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you also have to think about how much flexibility you have in your hip. If you can't get to 90 degrees and your knees are higher,
Yeah.
then all of that force and kind of like where you're lacking in that hip motion is going to go straight to your lower back.
And it's like you're
Right.
giving up a lot of motion for
Yeah.
that hinge. Like you're missing out on a lot
Right.
of movement, right?
So yeah, in my perspective, like from a safe mechanical perspective, you should be operating maybe in like the 80 percentile of like what your total range of motion is.
Mm-hmm.
So you can work to increase your hip mobility, and that's great. So if you want to sit low, you've got to do something to help you get there, so you're not putting force elsewhere.
Right.
Um, like, your head bone's connected to your shoulder bone, your shoulder,
Yeah.
everything's connected. So if you don't have motion somewhere else or you don't have strength somewhere else, something else is going to have to make up or take up the slack for it.
Absolutely. One thing I'd like to do on our next episode is this, folks, on the drumtalktv.com website, there's a video submissions tab in the upper right. If you click there, you can also submit photos. I'd love to receive a bunch of photos of guys and ladies sitting at their drum set, and for me to put each one on screen, and for
I love that.
Janice to rate ergonomically how it looks from their body type and how it's set up. And if we do that, folks, or when we will do that, if Janice has advice, don't take it personally. We know our gear is our babies, but she's not criticizing. She's making a medical recommendation, basically, of what could help prevent injury based on how she sees your body type, your reach, how you're sitting, and how your stuff is set up. I think that'd be
Yeah,
fun to do.
that'd be super fun. I mean, just knowing that that's like kind of like a snapshot in time, right? There's
Yeah.
obviously other things that I would want to check and everything like that. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I do on a regular basis, whether it's in person or
Yeah.
virtual.
And I
Like I
guess
have
even
people,
videos. They could submit videos and we can look
yeah,
at them
that's
together.
actually what I prefer.
Okay, we'll
So,
do that. Yeah.
yeah, they don't have to be super long, but maybe like 10, 15 seconds of it, and we can
Yeah.
kind of take a look at that.
That's cool. So submit the videos, and not only that, folks, depending on what they are, and you'll read the guidelines of what we're looking for on that submission form. We'll feature your videos on Drum Talk TV outside of that exercise here on the show. So it's a good opportunity. Go ahead and do that. It's drumtalktv.com. In fact, Stephen is going to put in the submissions link in the comments and pin it to the top. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, that'll be a fun exercise. I think it'd be very educational for people, even if they don't do it and they're just watching and they say, "Oh, I set up like her, and I don't have that kind of reach with that thing way out there."
Yeah,
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 so
for
that'd be
sure.
cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. Any other questions from anybody else? Anyone else want to chime in? Checking on the time here. Okay, got a few more minutes. If anyone else wants to submit a question or report on an ailment that maybe you worked around and feels better, or something that's getting worse that Janice could ask you some questions and give you some advice on, feel free to chime in the meantime, my arthritis has gotten a lot better, and I do believe in part it's for us from a, thanks Steve, that link's in there, folks, from a supplement that I've been taking for a while that is made for helping with arthritis, and it also is a secondary benefit. It's helped with my blood sugar as well, which is
Mm,
great because I'm type 2 diabetic. So it's been wonderful. But my arthritis a year ago, before I started taking this, I've been taking it for 6 months, I think, um, was so much worse. Like to the
mm.
point where if I bumped a knuckle, it was really painful. Now I have a lot of movement. I have to really work a lot. Like if I'm working out in the yard or building stuff or just play a lot, then I can feel it. But I
Sure.
even don't even feel it as much with the cold weather like I used to.
That's
So
great.
there's always hope. There's hope. I'm getting
Yeah.
older, but feeling better. I can hear. I got more movement.
Hey, we're set. You're gonna
Yeah,
be like
and
Benjamin Button, like
yeah,
aging backwards.
exactly. Ooh, that'd be great if the hair came back. I had great hair.
Yeah.
I had really great hair. Now I have gray hair.
Nice. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but it looks. I think my daughter has hair like yours. It's dark and she's got a lot of wiry streaks of white in it. One of my daughters. I think it looks great. With me, I got
Thanks.
that stupid Eastern European Jewish horseshoe thing going. So I don't grow my hair out anymore. I haven't in 24 years actually. I saved my
That's funny.
ponytail though. I have my ponytail in a plastic bag. It's about that long from
Wow.
cutting it off like 20 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That must
All
have
right.
been a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it was. Um, I'm going to check one more time. All right. No questions, anybody? Really? No other questions? Okay. No worries. We're just happy that you're watching, getting a lot out of this, and we'll put it on our other channels. So, folks, if you're seeing it on YouTube, we will be going live on YouTube as well, along with Facebook, by the next time we do this. And we also put it on Instagram, if Instagram is your jam, and on Vimeo. Also, sign up for the Drum Talk TV newsletter. We got lots of big things happening, especially with the Drum Talk TV Brilliance.com membership site. We've already got 2 concerts in the queue for our concert series, live concerts, January 27th with the Kinky Wizards and February 17th with Aaron Emerson and his band Holiday on Saturn. So excited to have them, and it's all in virtual environments that you don't need goggles for. So go to drumtalktvbrilliance.com and sign up for our newsletter so you get info on things you missed and info on things coming up. Janice, what would some closing words be that you can give from your wisdom as maybe just one good rule of thumb from your toolbox for drummers to help avoid injuries?
Ooh, the main thing is set up, set up, set up. That's probably where people can really save themselves a lot of grief.
Great.
For sure.
So
So
send your
check it
videos
out.
in, and Janice will do a critique on how your setup is versus your body type, and make sure in the video we can see you playing, of course.
Do it from the side and from the front.
Okay,
That's
cool.
what I would, that's what
Great.
I would recommend.
Awesome. If they only have one camera and can only do one
From
take,
the
almost a
side.
diagonal, maybe? So you get a bit
Mm,
of both? As
yeah,
long as they're not
sure.
obstructed, I suppose, right?
Right. That's
Yeah.
the main thing. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Great.
Cool.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. And you can follow Janice at all the channels that are listed in the post here as well. And we look forward to seeing you over at Brilliance, and look forward to seeing you next month on this show, Drumming Injury Talk on Drum Talk TV. And that date will be out soon. Do we have a date already?
I think we do.
We
Somewhere
do.
in there.
It is on same time on the 9th, Friday the 9th at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. UK. I had to do the math because I'm not in Pacific. I'm an hour ahead right now in Arizona, so I got a little compopulated. But there you go. Thanks, folks. We will see
All
you
right.
soon. And Janice, thank you so much. And
My
folks,
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
yeah, take care of yourself, folks.
Yeah.
Set up properly. See you soon.